Thank you for joining us on the Omnicast. I'm your host, Tyler Jacobson, again joined by Susan Berry of Hive Marketing. Hi, Susan.
Hello, Tyler. How are you today?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I am also wonderful. I'm in beautiful Amelia Island, Florida this week and having a wonderful time.
Okay, how's the weather?
It's super hot.
Okay.
It's like, I think it's about 1,000 degrees.
Yeah?
Give or take. Yeah, it's very hot. But I like it. It's nice.
Do you have air conditioning as God intended?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
As one must have in any place in Florida.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. What are you doing out there?
Visiting some friends, taking a little vacation, and, just getting away from it all. Change of scenery.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your vacation to do the podcast with us.
The pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me.
Always. I think you're the regular guest now.
Awesome. I like
Yes.
it.
You're somewhere in between guest and co-host now. We're doing some transitioning. Today I wanted to talk about... What? Go ahead. No.
I have only nonsensical episode ideas for you. So I'm the co-host that's like trying to bring the show down, like trying to ruin the show.
I don't think so. One of the best pieces of advice, and I can't remember where I got this, but it was about, doing a podcast was either be extremely entertaining or be extremely knowledgeable. And so if we can't be extremely knowledgeable,
I like can just giggle a lot.
I like to think that we're both, but yeah. So let's at least lean on entertaining because we don't have to know anything to do that.
Fantastic. I can dig it.
Let's talk about the buyer's journey and the buyer's funnel.
Fantastic.
What
do you know serious.
About it? It is very serious.
I know a lot about the buyer's journey in terms of travel buying decisions. So there is and I don't think this matches up in other industries, but I'll tell it to you and you can tell me. Okay. There's the inspiration phase, which is like when you're casting about where should I go? What should I do? Okay. There is the something phase, which is when you're doing research and getting ideas from your friends and looking at destinations. And then there's some other phases, which I cannot remember. But they end up in you making a decision about where to go on a trip.
So be very entertaining is what you're saying.
I know. I realized I bit off more than I could chew. Like I knew about the inspiration phase. And then once I started going down that path, I was like, ooh.
What's next?
Big mistake.
Okay. So, what I'd like everybody to do at this point is open up to page 6 in the book. No, I'm just kidding. We don't have a book. Okay. So I want you to imagine a funnel and tell me if I'm describing this. If the way I'm describing it makes sense. If it doesn't, you just tell me and we'll figure out another way to do it. But I want you to imagine a funnel, right? Okay. Like you use in the kitchen.
Yep. And I'm going to draw one on my piece of paper.
Okay. And it is dissected horizontally into quadrants. So you have 4... not even quadrants, I guess, just quarters. So you have your top quarter of the funnel. You've got 2 middle quarters and then a bottom of your funnel, which is going to be the smallest part of it all. Yes, that looks correct.
How does that look? Okay.
Yes, and so anybody listening to this on the podcast, I think I've described it properly. So that top quarter of the funnel, that top horizontal slice, that's your biggest group, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to be your awareness group. Now, just as water would trickle down a funnel, the next phase of it is going to be the consideration phase. That's the next quarter of the funnel. The next quarter, which is even smaller than consideration, is going to be conversion. And then the final piece of the funnel, the final quarter, is what we would call advocacy. And that's going to just be the smallest part of it. This is the buyer's journey. Nobody can ever advocate for your product in this version of the funnel unless they've already become a customer, which happens at conversion. Nobody can ever become a customer if they haven't considered becoming a customer. That's conversion. And they can't even consider you if they're not aware of you. So that's the top portion of the funnel.
Got it. And Tyler, do you think that this is the same for business to consumer marketing as business to business marketing, or do you think there are any variations that we should be aware of?
So there are definitely variations, but let me address your question right out of the gate. So your question was, does it vary from B2B or B2C? And the answer is, in general, no. People are still making buying decisions, and they still have to pass all of these gates. And so again, let's jump back to awareness real quick.
Okay.
Awareness is going to be the biggest part of the funnel. That's going to be your biggest chunk of audience right there. And the reason it's a funnel is not only because people have to cascade through it, but also those sections represent how big your audience is. So you're going to create awareness campaigns to everybody, right? And there are going to be people who are out there who are like, omniphonic, digital marketing, that's great. I have no need. I don't even know what a marketing is, right? And so then they're like, yeah, anything you tell me from that point on, who cares, right? I have no need for it. The next phase, so you lose audience there. You have a smaller audience that moves into consideration. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question about that?
Please. It'd be a boring show if you don't.
Do you think that you have to market to people who don't care about your product in order to make this marketing funnel work correctly? So in other words, I know who needs me. I have a very specific target audience. So do I need to do awareness marketing outside that target audience, or are you saying awareness marketing to the target audience, some of whom will decide they don't need you?
You're B2B, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you have your target audience, and that target audience is who you should cover in awareness. Yeah, you don't necessarily need to go outside of it, but you are still going to have a smaller audience that moves on into consideration because some people already have a solution, or they don't have a problem that you fill at that point.
Okay.
So they're not moving on in consideration. Now, if we take a B2C product like Coca-Cola, that's an example I always use. Coca-Cola spends a ridiculous amount of money, as does Nike, as does any big brand that you can think of, Walt Disney, right? They spend a ridiculous amount of money making sure that everybody in America knows Coca-Cola. And they know that not everybody is going to have a need for Coca-Cola. They are probably actively marketing to diabetics. And they understand that. They know that. Because even if a diabetic can't drink Coke or ever buy Coke, or they shouldn't buy Coke, they are at least aware of it. They can advocate for it. They can, everybody in America knows it, right? So there's going to be a lot of trust in that.
Gotcha.
But for somebody like you, where you have almost anybody that we're talking to right now, anybody listening to this, or most of the companies, unless you are one of those Goliaths, you're not going to be able to market to everybody in America. And so, yeah, you do focus on that target audience. And the more you can focus on the people who are going to say yes, that's going to be theoretically a more effective use of your ad dollars.
Got it. Understood. It seems like the awareness piece in my case is somewhat about reminder. Like, people are aware of me, but they need to remember that I exist at the time that they need me. Are you getting to that?
What section of the funnel is that in?
Consideration, I would say.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the consideration portion of the funnel is where we do things like remarket. Now, let me step back 1 second. If somebody, let's say that you want to, let's say that, like me, you need a hotel room in France, right, in Paris. At that point, I already have. I'm going into Google. I'm going into search, and I'm saying I have a need and I need a solution. I can be made aware of those solutions, and I can consider them, and I can convert all within a single search. So there's not going to be a long buying cycle. Now, though, Susan, if you are selling me your marketing services for $10,000 a month, even if I have a marketing budget that easily covers that, I'm probably going to have a longer buying cycle because there's far more things that I have to consider in that, right? And so you do need to really address those steps because you know that it's not going to be a single search where all of those different stages of the funnel get addressed, right? So now you've cleared that awareness phase, and now you're in that consideration. Yes, I need to remind people that I exist. I need to deepen my value proposition if I can. And now you have the opportunity to deepen that value proposition because you don't have to generally explain your services. Now you can start getting dialed in and say, this more complicated problem that you have, let's talk about that. You already know what I do generally. Now we can have a more complicated conversation.
Oh, that's a really good point. I wouldn't have thought of that you can be more specific.
Yes. And when you do that, I mean, you can, let's say, so there's a couple different ways that you could do this. You could do it through an email. If you have somebody's email address and you know that they've expressed some interest in you, but they haven't actually closed, they haven't converted, you can start sending out drip campaigns, and you can start paying attention to which subject lines and tend to get you the better response with people in different positions at the companies that you're talking to. So you can focus on that. You can be like, you know what? Anytime I talk about budget or anytime I talk about saving budget, those emails get opened. So now you start getting better at having those complicated conversations because you know really in a very general way what those people's pain points are. And how you're gonna earn that trust.
So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but here's this thing that happens. I know that my target audience needs something that I have, but they don't know or don't want to admit that they need it, or they're in denial. So. Is that a terrible question to ask? It has to do with my recession readiness program.
Is it shameful?
Kind of. And in the hotel industry, I'm not sure about in other verticals, but in hotels, people believe that if you say the word recession, it's like Voldemort in Harry Potter, and that it will make recession happen. So they try to pretend like it's not happening until the very last minute. Now, maybe in the upper echelons of the company, they're, having meetings about what are we going to do about a recession. But in terms of in the hotel properties, no one will say it. I think it's because the executive level folks are afraid that if they acknowledge a recession is coming or happening, that the people in the field are going to give everything away. Like, it's a fire sale, a recession's coming. And so they're trying to hold on to every last scrap of business they can at a rate premium until they have to start reducing prices. That's pure conjecture on my part, but that's what I have observed over many moons.
So it's not pure conjecture. You've seen it happen. You know that this is, and you recognize that this is the fear that's going to happen. And I've been listening to a podcast that was recommended to me, StoryBrand. I recommend it. And they talk a lot about aspirational, right? You're the guide who's taking the hero to the destination that they want, right?
Yes.
You're Obi-Wan, you're teaching Luke how to blow up the Death Star, right? But you're not Luke. And so you could almost speak to that because you've already addressed in this very short conversation here. One, they don't want to hear the word, right? It triggers panic, and people feel shameful about it. So now you can call it the R word. Just by saying that, you're already saying, okay, wait, is the R word that I'm thinking of the same R word that you're thinking of?
Yeah,
you can win that.
I've done that a little bit. Yeah.
But then the other thing is that you can say, listen, this is why your competitors don't want to talk about this. And it might be the reason you don't want to talk about it. But here's how we're going to manage you through this so that so that the people below you don't panic. Instead, they prepare.
I really like that. So this is what your competitors aren't doing that you could be doing.
Right. Don't suffer that same paralysis that they're experiencing, because that's all everybody's go-to right now. We all want to be paralyzed with panic because we don't want to summon it, right? Or we don't want to trigger panic with the property level. So here's how we're going to address this, prepare for it, and make sure that we come out the other end winners.
I like it.
So you can do that in consideration, right? Because that's showing your value. That's showing that, hey, I've been here previously. I know what's coming. I understand your fears. So even though you haven't hired me, I'm already going to build that trust with you. And I think that's a lot of the consideration process. It's all value building. Even if you're high price, are you high price? Okay, so even if you're high price, it should be that price is worth that payment because the value that I'm bringing, the expertise and experience that I'm bringing, are going to resolve that any value conflict that you might be experiencing in my proposition.
Actually, I say that I'm high priced if you get past this first hurdle. So I think I've described this program to you before, so if I have, stop me. But I have a recession readiness program. It starts with a stress test, which I consider to be the top of my sales funnel. So not marketing funnel, but sales funnel. It's free. It's an email capture. And once you take this quiz, you get what I consider to be really good recommendations and resources for what to do based on the answers to the quiz. So it's like a DIY. If you do nothing else, take this stress test and it'll target for you, okay, your problem areas are XYZ. Here are some suggestions for how to solve that. Here's some books to read. Here's some podcasts, blah, 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 whatever. My goal is that once people take the stress test, depending on what their scores look like, I have the opportunity to then say, hey, looks like you're really struggling on XYZ thing. Would you be interested in talking about it more? And ultimately work my way down the road. I've got 3 different services that I offer that are not free, so not the stress test, that are intended to solve whatever problems surface. The challenge that I'm having, and I'm sorry for going on and on about this, the challenge that I'm having, I can't get people to take this. It's free. It takes 10 minutes. It's like 10, 12 questions. It's all information that they have at the ready, so it's not like they have to do a lot of homework to figure it out. So it seems to me like it's a no-brainer. They get free recommendations and resources from a 20-plus year veteran. I've worked through 2 different recessions. Like, what's not to want in this? But there is some obstacle that's keeping people from taking this test. I think part of it is that they just don't want to think about it. Like, I don't want to have to worry about that right now. But I think part of it is something that I could be doing differently. And I'm not sure what that is. So that's what I want your advice about.
Okay. So, I mean, I think you hit on one thing there that is important. There's a reason people don't want to take this. They don't want to have to acknowledge that there's a problem that they have to brace for, right? And directing their energy to this problem that is down the line and it's not necessarily coming yet. And do I have the capacity to even start thinking about this?
Exactly. And I mean, it's a short-sighted business. You know, you've got to fill the hotel tonight, not worry about a year from now. But the actions that you take today will impact a year from now dramatically. And if you do the things you're supposed to do, make a huge difference. But nobody wants to think about it.
Who are you talking to, by the way?
In this case, I'm talking to hotel general managers, directors of sales and marketing, and then VPs of sales or VPs of operations in management companies and brands. So I've had some people take it, right? So, and the VPs in particular have found it very insightful to have this information for their hotels.
So what's the hook right now? And how are you getting that hook? How are you trying to get in front of these people?
So 100% of my marketing efforts, not because I think this is the right thing to do, this is just what I'm doing, are LinkedIn. So to me, it's the easiest, most manageable audience, and I have not figured out what I need to do about this yet. So I post on LinkedIn 10 times a week, 5 on my personal page and 5 on my business page, and 1 out of those 5 drives to the stress test. Now, everything else does subtly, but 1 out of those 5 is a direct, like, take this thing, you silly gooses, get on it, you know.
Okay, and it hasn't been effective?
No.
Okay.
I've been doing it only for a month, so I don't know if that's enough time or.
Well, and it's organic, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I want to say one, it takes a lot of, I think, courage to have this conversation publicly. And so I really appreciate you trusting me with it and sharing it with the audience. Because really that's a very vulnerable thing. And I think it's very cool that you did that.
What are you going to do if I start crying? I'm just kidding.
Well, I'll try not to laugh. I think that's rule number one. Try not to laugh when people are crying.
Okay.
No, I think, okay, so the aspiration here isn't about surviving a recession. It's about being smart, and it's about having a great year despite a coming recession.
Right. And anything that we recommend that a hotel do is going to help them regardless of a recession. The word, or like using a forthcoming recession, is just another way to talk about performance improvement. So if you do these things and a recession doesn't come, you haven't wasted your time. You're still improving your hotel's performance.
So, but this is almost, it's actually a fairly common thing where you have so many different messages that you're trying to put into this box that it's hard to focus on the hook. And the hook is really what you need to test to bring people in so that you can have a conversation with them about taking this free test. So it's almost like your awareness piece is just that hook. Your consideration piece, you have multiple funnels here. This is, okay, now I'm starting to get a better view of this landscape. Okay, so one conversion, one funnel exists simply to get you to take the free assessment.
Yes.
That is part of a different strategic funnel that once they've taken that, now they're actually in consideration for using your services. But that's you have to view them as two different pieces.
And the second part, at the risk of sounding obnoxious, if I can get them into my process, I feel great about my ability to convert and close. So I feel great about being able to take somebody who I've identified as a need and having them work with me. That part I'm not worried about. It's just getting them in the original funnel in the first place.
Right. And so make that your focus. That conversion isn't your mid funnel. That is its own funnel with its own conversion that takes place there. So let's take it from that step, because you're saying if you can get them into there, now they're in consideration in another funnel, and you feel really confident that you can close them. Okay.
Yes.
So you have to figure out your hook. I believe that it was. Oh man. I'm gonna totally forget his name now. I can't remember who it was, but he has a company called Mobile Monkey.
Okay.
Oh, it drives me nuts that I can't recall his name right now. But he either came up with this or he repeats these 4 personas, these 4 voices that you use when you're speaking to your customer. In ads especially, or any copy. But one of them is the bearer of bad news. A recession is coming, right? One of them is the friend, the helping hand, the helpful friend, which is, hey, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this, and you're going to look good, right?
And here's some free stuff for you.
Well, that would be the third one, which is the hero. So the hero is, and I think prior to listening to StoryBrand, I liked the hero, but now I'm like, no, you're not the hero. You're the guide. Now, you could be the person, you could be Superman, but you have to remember that Lois Lane is the hero, right?
Okay.
In this version, you're not the hero. You're the person who's guiding them towards being their own hero.
Yes, for the test, but I want to be their hero later. The test. So if they take the test, yes, they can be their own hero.
Okay,
but
let me get to the 4th persona.
Oh, okay.
And then the 4th one is the comedian, where it's just hilarious. It's I don't know how you do that around recessions.
Yeah, it's not.
Look at these clods tripping on recessions. I don't know. I don't know.
I think I have some pretty funny posts, but you're right. They're not direct.
Make sure your hairline is the only thing receding. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, suffering from recession. All right. So, but again, you have those 4 different things. So now you have to think about these different personas and how you want to pitch. How can you be helpful? How can you scare them? How can you be a hero to them? Or how can you make them laugh? And then see which one seems to work the best, because you got to try these out. The other issue that I see with the way that you're doing this is that it's organic, which means that on social, inorganic, you're going to have a limited reach.
You know what's interesting, though? Watching, part of this has been a LinkedIn experiment to see what happens. I have a friend who's also simultaneously doing a LinkedIn experiment, and he's way ahead of me. So I'm kind of like watching what he's doing and following him to see what happens. And my reach has doubled and tripled over the month or so, maybe 6 weeks that I've been doing this experiment.
Okay.
So there is opportunity. I agree with you that it's kind of silly that I'm not putting money behind it. But there is still some opportunity to get some edge rank on LinkedIn, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's beautiful. And listen, I would be a poor digital marketer if I wasn't constantly learning from these kinds of experiments as well. So that's really important that you said that, and you're able to increase your organic reach on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So maybe you keep going with that, and you see if you can hit some sort of level of audience saturation that will bring people in. But you do need to test your messages.
I don't think it's enough. Yeah. And I don't think it's enough. I don't think the organic is enough. I think what I have been hoping is that organic posting would produce enough business to tide me over until I felt like it's perfect now. I'm totally ready. Now I'm going to put money behind it and really push it out there. But that's probably a fool's errand. Yeah.
I would agree with that. Also, why does it sound like there's a dragon snoring over there?
There is tree removal happening across the street from this house where I am. Okay. So,
So it's not a dragon.
I can barely hear it because I have my headphones on, but you can definitely hear it. I take it.
Yes. But I just wanted to make sure that you weren't in any imminent danger. Ish. Okay, so so I think that that's good, but yes, it is a fool's errand to say, well, I'm going to wait until I have the perfect message until I run ads. No. This is how you find that perfect message, because you actually have control over who sees it and how often they see it, and you can test. You can say, oh, this ad is getting clicks. People are responding to this message. Now I'm going to try and go to market more aggressively with this message that's working.
So would you think that the 4 personas, you have to choose one? Or do you think that I should be writing copy and content with the idea that I'm testing the 4 to see what resonates the best? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think that you're testing the 4 to see which one works.
Okay.
And you're constantly testing those 4. So I think it was Neil Patel who was saying that on your remarketing ads. So I'm going to get a little deep and geeky here. Hopefully it's worthwhile. Okay, so let's say that you are running an ad and you're running those 4 different personas. And so let's say that the helpful friend is getting the best click-through rate. And you bring people into a web page or a landing page where now there's a video of Susan and she's talking about how you get prepared and what your aspirational outcome is, but you got to take this assessment. You have to, or you're essentially nowhere. So people come by the page and we're tracking it and they're just not filling out the form, but they've been to the page. Now you can relaunch some remarketing to those people. So now they're going to see ads say, come on, you need to take this. Right? You take this, we're going to give you some free stuff. You can deepen the value proposition.
That's a really good idea, because I know people are going to it and not finishing. And some of it is people who don't want to give me a false lead, like they're just interested in what I'm doing, but they don't want to fill it all the way out. You know what I mean? Like I've had people tell me that, I checked that out, but I didn't want to give you a fake lead.
Okay, I'm going to give you one other little free tip here. Put Hotjar. It's a tool. Put it on that landing page and have it track that form fill. And you can see what field or fields you get your biggest drop off on. And you can say, okay, well, if I exclude this field, do I get a better return?
Awesome. Thank you.
And
that's a great idea.
I think you can do it for free.
Okay. Or if it's a tiny bit, okay. Just can't be thousands of dollars.
Well, I mean, again, if a contract for you, and I don't know how much a contract for you, but if a contract for you is $100,000, then $1,000 cost per lead might ultimately end up being worth it.
Totally.
Right? So you have to think about what that investment yields.
That will be the case at some point, but we're not quite there yet. Part of the other reason that I want people to take this test is that I think it will be extremely valuable to analyze the data, but I just don't have a big enough sample size yet. Like I ran this in beta all
Hold
summer.
on, I'm not going to let you take me on a tangent yet. We got to go back to our remarketing.
Oh, okay.
Then we can get on the tangent. Okay, so people have come by the website and they haven't converted, right? And now we're running remarketing to them. One of the things that Neil Patel recommends is that you try the different personas again in the remarketing. So if they came in through Helpful Friend, then remarket them with Bearer of Bad News. And if they came in through Bearer of Bad News, then remarket them with Helpful Friend and see if those personas will actually deepen the conversation if you switch them around.
That's interesting. You know, it almost matches up. It's not quite the same thing, but it almost matches up to Gretchen Rubin's 4 tendencies, which I know I've mentioned to you before, but we never really got into. And there's something around so the 4 tendencies just measure how people handle expectations. It's not like a full personality profile like a Myers-Briggs or anything like that.
Right.
But I've heard a lot of conversation around doing marketing to appeal to each of those 4 tendencies because people react to expectations differently. So the reason I'm saying this is that it sort of matches up to that and something that I've been thinking all along, which is I have to try to figure out what my people are.
Right. And there's ways to do that, but I think I really like the way you're thinking about it because it's like, well, I know my people are hotel general managers, but really my people are this segment of hotel general managers.
Exactly.
And now we got to figure out who those people are so we can exclude the people who aren't them.
Yes.
Right? And honestly, I said that wrong. It's not to exclude the people who aren't them. It's really to put the focus on the people who are them.
Yeah. And if I'm going to spend money and put money behind it, I want to put money behind the ones that are going to pay off the most. Duh. I mean, duh. Really.
Exactly. All right. So I'm sorry. So do you want to go back to what you were saying prior to me cutting you off and saying? Okay. So I think that those you test out those 4 different personas, you write to those 4 different personas, and then you continue to test them. And what you're always testing, right? That's how you really optimize things. Even when things are going well, you want to see if you can make them go weller. So you're always going to be testing copy. You're always going to be testing those personas throughout this. But yes, write to all 4 of them. And then the way that I recommend looking at that is it's not looking for the one that's working. It's to drop off the ones that aren't working. And then if we try that, you run all 4 personas and none of it's working, maybe the offerer. Maybe it's not the voice at this point. Maybe it's the offer.
Yeah.
So then it's a matter of changing that. Yeah.
And at the risk of sounding like sort of naive and silly, to me, this offer seems so valuable. Like you're basically getting an hour or 2 of free consulting from me, plus all the work I put into creating this to get it together and blah, 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 for nothing. Like who wouldn't want to take that? It takes 10 minutes.
Somebody who doesn't want to have to face, it's somebody who doesn't want to have to face that they have more expensive work in front of them, right?
Yeah.
That's not knocking down their door. But if you're a high achiever, right? If you're a general manager who is like, listen, I'm not just a hotel general manager. I'm going to be an award-winning hotel manager. I'm going to be somebody who takes care of my people through the hard times. And I'm going to make those hard times good times because that's my objective in all of this is not just to be a leader, it's to be the best leader and to be prepared and move my way up through the organization, right? So I think that there's all sorts of different ways that you can get to that without having to talk necessarily about recession. And maybe
it's interesting because now that I am thinking about it in this way, from you saying they don't want to have to do the work on the other side, I've gotten many more responses from hotels that are in the green zone and doing great than I have from hotels that are in the yellow or red zone. And I know for a fact that more hotels are in the yellow or red zone in general than are in the green zone. So of course the hotels that are doing well don't mind taking it because they're like, listen, we're cool. You may have a couple little tips or a book you can recommend, but we've got this. So how do I change that? That's a
Because
question
hotels that are
probably.
succeeding are doing this. That's the thing. It's like
Yes.
you can talk, especially because you have all those people who aspire to be those successful hotels, and you have data that says this is what successful hotels are doing. Right? And so maybe this is part of a process of how to start being in line with what successful hotels are already doing. And part of it is taking this test.
But it's the opposite because I think that, to your point,
Okay.
they're taking it because they don't perceive that they're going to have a lot of work to do on the other. So it's like there's no obstacle to taking it because they know they're doing well.
But those people are already in the green, right? So they're the easy, low-hanging fruit. So it's easy to talk to them theoretically. What you're going
Yeah.
for is the yellow and red hotels where there's a lot more
Right.
opportunity. And so you kind of leverage. I hear what you're saying. I just don't know. Like, you don't need more hotels that are in the green, right? Or do you?
No, I know. The only reason I'm making that point is to say there's definitely something there around the perceived obstacle on the other side of the test. So if you don't perceive that you're going to have to do a bunch of crap after you finish taking the test, then you're more likely to take it. If you
Right.
aren't going to have to do a lot of stuff at the end, it's because you're already doing well. So somehow, if I can create a value proposition that makes it clear that whatever the outcome is on the other side, it will be worth it, that having to do 10 more things or whatever will pay off. I'm trying to think of how to say this. The payoff doesn't feel rich enough yet for the hotels that are in the yellow and the red zone.
Except that I think that the payoff really is that aspirational idea that what I want to be is a successful hotel. I want to be winning the awards, the Hilton Awards. I don't know what kind of awards there are, but I want to be seen. Everybody wants to be seen as successful. Mm-hmm. So you are telling me that you know what it takes to run a hotel successfully. Mm-hmm. How valuable is that to people running in the yellow and red?
Exactly.
That's the value proposition. No, that's the value proposition, though. And
I know,
this
but
is
they
just
don't
part of
wanna
it.
do the work, or they would already be good. That's probably not true.
No, but again, I don't think what you're selling necessarily is recession readiness. I don't think you're selling that at all. And I don't even think that that's the hook. I think the hook is you want to be successful and you want to be seen as a successful person.
Right. It's performance improvement in the frame of recession readiness because that's something to talk about right now.
Right. But maybe you can move it away from there because of the reasons that we've talked about. Maybe you don't, though. Maybe it's just a matter of there hasn't been enough experimentation at the awareness phase to see what moves people into consideration.
Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should rebrand it, like do one as recession readiness stress test and another one as a different name that's just generic performance improvement, and do run ads against it and see which one gets more clicks.
So a lot of what we're talking, yes, absolutely. Because the other thing is I was like, okay, so what part of the funnel does all of this fall into? And part of it for me falls into conversion, right? Because now we're saying, how do we actually we've already got you in consideration, but how do we push you through into that conversion? But it still is in consideration, right? There's that value proposition, and how do we make it just so good that you have to say yes? You can't say no. So yes, I think that one, it might be a reminder that you exist and that this can help them improve their performance. I think it's a concerted remarketing effort, which might be ads. And again, you can do those ads to people who have been on that page but haven't actually completed. I have also seen over and over and over again, and I have never had to put this to the test, but you might be able to, is that amazing landing page sales copy will do it every time. So that might be another thing. Where are you sending them to? And is that really deep copy? And because I mean, we've sat here and talked about this for what, close to a half an hour now. There's a lot of value there. There's a lot, but it's too much for a single ad. And you have a lot of expertise that you have to continually throw out there in front of these people.
And I think I've probably been thinking that my organic posting on LinkedIn was serving as various versions of a sales page. You know what I mean? But I think you're right. I think I should probably look at that copy. So right now I have them land starting the test.
Yeah.
Jumping right in.
I'd put a piece before that. I'd get them off of LinkedIn and then onto your own owned page first.
Yep.
And then have them move into taking the test. Because if it's all taking place on LinkedIn or conversion, right? If those are the two options, it's going to be harder to do that remarketing. I won't say it's impossible, but it's going to be a hell of a lot harder.
Okay. These are really good ideas. I appreciate that. I think the sales page is probably the first thing I'm going to try. And then I think I may run just a little campaign on LinkedIn just to see if anything happens, to give me kind of a baseline to then, toy with once I get a sales page in front of the test. I think that's good.
Okay, beautiful.
Okay, so then what about advocacy? We haven't gotten to that yet.
And that's what you have to pay for. No, I'm just kidding. No, advocacy, there's a lot of different forms of advocacy. One of the things that I think is easy that we already do, and you and I already did an episode on it. Do you know what it is? Online
reviews and online reputation.
Exactly. So that's one. Going back and asking people to consider how their experience with you has been is a form of triggering that advocacy. Also giving them a chance to give you some feedback and saying, listen, there was poop in my room. It was gross. Right? And you go, oh, I'm sorry. There shouldn't.
Whoopsie.
Was it your poop? Because if it yeah. No, but I mean, you have an opportunity to save the customer, and then you get to continue that experience, and you get to say, okay, well, we're going to take a bad situation, make it better, and leave everybody feeling good. And then those people will go out there and they'll be like, yeah, the stay was kind of weird, but they really took care of it. They really seemed to care. And so that's one of the biggest things I want to say about advocacy is that trust needs to be built at the awareness and consideration phase, right? And I can almost timeline this out. I visualize it. I'm a very visual thinker here. So it's a very long line of building trust, and then you have a small moment where you're actually trying to have that interaction with your customer. But then there's also a line that extends on the other side, which is just reinforcing that trust, continuing to be there, continuing to be helpful to them, and saying, I actually care about you and your experience, even when you're not paying me.
How do you do that for your customers? Like, can you think of an example?
Yes. So it depends on what kind of customer it is. But if it's transactional, like if it's B2C, and it's very momentary transactional, you can run sales exclusively to those people who've bought from you before. You could,
That's a good one.
Right? You could give them free things sometimes. You could bring them into beta tests. You could, if it's B2B, maybe I'm sending you tickets to go to a ball game or a concert or something like that.
One of the things
Christmas
I
cards.
do for my B2B, and that's who my customers are, is give them free analysis of industry trends. So like, I watched XYZ video, here's what I took out of it, just wanted to give you a quick executive summary, here's the link. I think that adds some value. I'm not sure how often it actually gets consumed or used, but I do think that it helps them to understand that I'm interested in their success beyond the dollar amount that they're paying me. Does that
Absolutely.
make sense to you?
And so when it comes down to like the inbox, because it sounds like this is an email play. Sometimes it's enough just for them to see your name and a subject line in their inbox. And maybe it's not even a trust building other than I keep seeing her name. And when somebody says, oh man, we need help on our property, they go, you know what? You need to contact Susan Berry. I know I just got an email from her. Let me find it.
Totally. Exactly. Perfect.
Now, when it comes to advocacy, the other thing I want to say is, the other half of my professional persona is running nightlife, right? And the cool thing about running events is that advocacy portion of the funnel jumps above conversion. Because...
Oh, yeah.
So when you were encouraging me to write a book about this stuff, I was like, oh, that's kind of the interesting thing that I should focus on, is that it has a different funnel that has advocacy higher up than, before conversion. Because, Susan, I want to go out this weekend, but I don't want to go alone. Does this sound like fun to you? Now, you've got to consider it. I'm spreading the word. All right?
But you're also jumping through awareness and consideration, because you're like, hey, we're going to go out this weekend. I went last time and it was amazing. Come on, we're going.
You're kind of, well, yes, but that's advocacy. That's all advocacy there.
But I mean, they're converting for you. Like, you're not just going to sit back and go, I wonder if it will be fun. If my friend's in my face, like, oh, you have to come to this night, it's amazing. Then I'll be like, okay, cool.
Right. And my experience, so if there's a book out there called Growth Hacker Marketing. Great book. I highly recommend it. Have you read it?
I have, I think.
Okay, so this is the same kind of situation there, where they're talking about like Dropbox, and they have some other examples, but it's my experience gets better when I'm able to share it with other people, right? And that's why it's going to grow, because it's better for you if you are sharing it as an end user.
If I were to add something to the stress test that's share your results with your team, share these results with your team, or share these results with your boss. Is that dumb?
I don't know if it's dumb. I think it's worth putting it out there and seeing if anybody actually clicks on it. I would definitely I would definitely measure whether it looks to be effective. And that's the other thing, is like at the end of it, right? Hey, thank you for filling this out. One of the things you might want to be is share this with your colleagues, right? Put this on LinkedIn, whatever. Like, allow them the opportunity to share it, and then see if anybody actually does it. But they definitely won't if you don't put that on the thank you page.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think I think it's totally smart. I think one of the other things, though, that might even be more valuable is, again, you have a lot of data about other hotels. So what does that aggregated data look like? And how do I measure up against my industry peers, which can only be provided by you?
Yes. And so right now, I haven't obviously finished this, so we're real time setting up my plan. But for each of the 3 zones of survey results, I have a 2 email series that will ultimately be longer. But right now I have 2 built out for each of the 3, so 6 in total. But I think the third one, especially for green zone hotels who are just going to go into my email list and get my newsletter and, carry on with their lives, but don't necessarily need my help, here's how you stack up against your industry peers would be especially good. I think everybody would be interested, but I think that gives me an excuse to talk. That's another built-in third step that I hadn't thought of. So
and what I love about it, by the way, and I think anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. And the way anybody can do this is just by going out there and surveying. Maybe it's not even their customers. Maybe they don't have a customer base yet. But if you've figured out who your niche is, send out a survey, get the feedback, turn it into a report, and say, hey, this is an industry report. Give me your name and email, and I will give you this. So when I'm delivering that, or let's jump over back to you, when you are delivering these results of how you stack up against competitors, how much trust does that put into you? You are the receiver and the giver of all of this information, and nobody else can claim that. There's a lot of trust, and that trust is essential to consideration and advocacy.
Got it. Makes sense. I like it.
All right. So did we solve all the problems?
I think we got a good start, and I really got a lot of good ideas, so I appreciate it.
Cool. So one thing that I just did on my website is I made it so that anybody can go to my website and they can schedule time with me, a free half hour, to do essentially what we just did. I didn't plan for that to happen in this podcast, but I'm so glad it did. So if you, the listener, the viewer, if you would like to have this same kind of conversation with me, please go to my website, omniphonic.com, click schedule a consultation, and you can just pick a time, and it's totally free, and we can do it over Skype or Google Meet or something like that. And yeah, we can start sorting out some of this for you and help take you to the next level. Susan, what do you have for our viewers and listeners?
Well, because everyone's been hearing about my stress test, you should go to hive-marketing.com and take it if you're a hotel so that you can find out how ready you are for a recession.
And get a free consultation, right?
Yes, and get us something.
See how you stack up against competitors.
Amazing. ABC. We got it.
Okay. All right. And please leave us a review so we know what you love and we can deliver more great marketing podcasts for you. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Fantastic.
All right. Tyler Jacobson back here with you. I am going to give you the one actionable thing from this episode, which is, well, Susan's here with me too. Susan.
Hi.
Okay. So the one actionable thing from this episode that we want you to focus on is these 4 personas. Larry Kim was the gentleman, by the way, who introduced this to me through his website. So the 4 personas were bearer of bad news, right?
Ooh.
Thank you for your color commentary. Bearer of bad news. The helpful friend, the hero.
There you go. Hooray!
And the comedian. There you go. That was the only natural one of all of those. That was great. All right. So look at your marketing materials right now, whether it's an organic post, whether it's an email, whether it's an ad, right? And say, where does this apply? To which persona does this subject line, this advertising statement, to which persona does this apply? And if it doesn't apply to any of those 4, that's your signal that you've got to update it. Susan, anything you'd put behind that?
I think that's fantastic, and thank you for telling us Larry Kim as the originator of these 4 personas. I'm going to check him out as soon as we're done.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good information. So, all right, until next time.